Alive, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in our amazing world. Welcome to an incredible conversation, an incredible, very interesting conversation that I'm excited to have with the beautiful Lee, who's joining me all the way from Hawaii today to talk about her amazing experiences. Got to finish that last little bit of IT stuff, and then we are right. So, Lee, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
It is a real honor. I love this topic about that there is no fear, 3 NDEs and 1 SDE, which we're going to find out what that all means. But let me introduce you to all our listeners. So, Lee started this life in Hawaii in early adulthood. You're married and had 2 sons. Good. But after divorcing, you traveled with your children to Russia. Wow, that's a little bit different from Hawaii, right? And then returning to the US, you attended college at the same time as your sons, graduating together. I love it, with your MA and your son with your BS on the same stage. That would have been so amazing. And stuff. And after moving back to Hawaii, Lee has volunteered through the 2008 eruption, the volcano eruption, 2008-2018 volcano eruption that displaced over 1,000 people, listening to your intuitive skills as a life coach, and guiding all people through the trauma and everything else. And you've also experienced 3 NDEs and an SDE. So, Lee, I'd love to know more. I'd love to know more from you about your life, and especially your NDEs. And I think a lot of people have heard of NDEs, but not many have heard of SDEs. So tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. I grew up in a very rough environment. My mother had 6 kids in 7.5 years, starting when she was 16. She was overwhelmed, frustrated, angry, and we got to be the brunt of that. But that was just the foundation. When I was 21, I had my 2nd son, and I had an infection, a massive infection afterward. And in the hospital, I had the first near-death experience where I had a fever of 111. I saw it on the thermometer, and I know that people are like, "That's not possible. You would have died." To which I answered, "Yes, I did." And so I just turned around and looked back at my body, and there it was. There was no emotion in it, and I floated up into a dark tunnel. And I went through this dark tunnel with, there was just bliss, complete love, complete acceptance, complete safety. And I got to this widening spot, and I was asked, "Do you want to come now?" by the most sweet, loving voice I'd ever heard. And I said, I panicked a little bit and said, "No, I have to go back and raise my children." And instantly went back down the tunnel and was plopped in my body, and the fever broke just like that. And I was out the next day. And so I continued on with my life, going all these places that you've already mentioned. And I'm just going to skip ahead because I know we don't have a lot of time. I'm going to go to the 3rd NDE now. And that what happened, it was after the eruption. I was running around trying to help the community as much as I could, and started to get kind of weak and tired. And I went to a meeting, and I couldn't open a pop can or a soda can. And when I did get it opened, I couldn't, the flavor was weird of what was in it. And I didn't think any of it. This is September 2019. I didn't think anything of it. We never do. We just keep going. And 2 days later, I ended up with a high fever, and that lasted for 2 days, in which I was not here. I was
Mhm.
somewhere else that was very kind of brown, kind of orange, pink, hazy or foggy, warm, very loving, extremely accepting, but not here. And there were no shapes. It was just like foggy. And in this, there was a whole bunch of somebodies chanting at me, "You have done what you came here to do."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's nice, that's wonderful, oh fine, okay," because it felt so good. I'm just like, "Oh yeah." And then all of a sudden hit me, "What?" And then I plopped back into my body and I'm like, "Well, if I've done what I came here to do, why am I here?"
Why are you back again?
So that was actually the start of my very fast learning of the spiritual path.
Yeah.
And I went through every teacher I could. I found the ones that, at that point in time, if I thought I was going to die, the one that seems most likely to be my best teacher would be Ram Dass. I
Yes.
studied everything of his.
Yep.
And he was a great teacher to me. And then I'm just going to move on from that one to the shared death experience, which happened in last summer, summer 2022, and is where it's actually started. And I had been thinking for some time that I needed to heal the relationship with my mother. Now, we have to understand here something. 15 years prior, my mother had killed my sister-in-law and was in prison for the rest of her life for that. I had no contact with her. Nobody in the family had contact with her. The only contact that the institution had was my brother, whose former wife she had killed.
Mhm.
And nobody talked about it. But
Mhm.
I thought, this is holding me back and I need to do something about this. But I
Mhm.
didn't have a clue what.
Mhm.
So I heard someone that I know talking, and she said that she'd had a similar background to mine, and she had learned that her parents had done what they did out of love for her so that she could become the person she was supposed to be. And I thought, wow, that's so amazing, but I can't do that, can I?
Mhm.
And so I rolled it around a bit, and then I asked, I'm like, I can't do this alone. I don't know how. And I just asked to whatever, whoever, the universe, whatever you want to call it. I said, how do I do this? And they gave me a picture of a movie theater or a theater, just a theater with all of the seats, and it's all dark, and I'm in the seats. I'm the only one in the seats. And then they went through, and I'm also the director, I'm the actor, I'm the person who does the lights and the camera, and I am the author of this entire show. And I'm like, okay. And then they had the show of my life going across the stage. And from this vantage point of all these different places, um, I could see that not only did my mother love me enough to choose to come into my life or to have me come into her life so that she could give me the foundation to be the transformer that I am today and help people with their traumas,
Yeah.
but that I also loved her enough to allow her to do that.
Yeah.
And when I came to that realization, it was so freeing. And I could feel the joy, I could feel the love. And then we fast forward a little bit to December, the middle of December. And for no apparent reason, I went from being the joyous person that I am and the loving person that I am. And I just felt this incredible angst, jittery feeling like I'd been on way too much caffeine for way too long. And I was just really, I mean, I was almost physically shaking, but I was also had this angst and anger and frustration and all of this in there. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I tried everything. I tried yoga, meditation. I tried warm baths. I tried walking. I tried everything I could think of. Nothing touched it at
Mhm.
all. And so I just, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And then, I know this is cliched and I don't mean it that way. This is the truth. On the third day it broke into complete freedom, joy, bliss, love. Like, I mean, even more so than I'd had in my NDEs. And I was just like, wow, what is going on here? Wow. To the point where a little bit later, a few hours after that, my brother called me because he was the only contact they had. And he said, our mother passed. So I told him my story of what was happening, what had happened. And he said, they called me a couple days ago and said she was in really bad shape and she wasn't supposed to make it. They didn't think she was going to make it. At that moment, I realized that I had gone through it with her. Yes. And it was so, there was no grief at all. And I understand grief. When my sister died, I felt grief. I mean, I lived it, but there was no grief. And it wasn't because I didn't love her. It was because we loved each other so much. And I knew that she was in a much better place. I could feel that she was there everywhere now, helping me. And that was an incredible feeling. And so that's pretty much how it went. I do add one little note. That same day, as I was on the phone with my brother, some friends called my husband and said, hey, you guys want to go out for coffee? And so he comes in and he says, do you want to go out for coffee? And I said, sure, I'll go out with you guys. And we went out, we had a good time. And I was not only not grieving, I was joyful. I was, interactive. I was there more so maybe even than I normally am. I was there.
Present.
Present. Yes. And what the whole crux of all of this is that we all have trauma, but some of us have life-changing traumas, and we need a little assistance with them. And that the tools that I've learned from all of this are available to anybody who wants them. And the tagline under that is, I can see, even though I've felt it deeply, I can see in a future the world will not look at death as something that's a loss or grieving, but rather something that is celebrated as going back home, being fully present and being you, being out of these meat suits that we're wearing and being free. And it will be celebrated that way.
I love that. Love that so much. Thank you for sharing, your journey and these experiences. And can I ask you, Lee, like, how has it actually helped you now in your life? Do you see life completely differently? Do you, how does that help you?
I see life completely differently. I am so much more joyful, so much more forgiving of myself as well as other people. I feel like we all have our journeys and we all have our reasons for being here. And so I'm much more patient with people, especially people closer around me.
Yeah.
But everybody, and I see me as a completely new person.
Yeah, and coming through all those things. And now I am assuming that there's no fear of death as such. And that, do you talk about your experiences and death and dying with other people to help them through their experiences?
Yes and yes, but let me explain that a little bit more. Yeah. I have not feared death since the first one when I was 21. Yeah. And if you don't fear death, you also don't fear life. And you are much more able to open and allow experiences.
Yeah.
And so you live life on a different level at that point. You're much more willing to take what they call risks, which are actually choosing to have a new experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do I help people with this? Yes. I help people who might be, say, a new widow who's the passing of her husband just destroyed her, just, I mean, fragmented her. And how does she come back? Or it might be a worker who is in a job that pays the bills, and we're all told, if it pays the bills, stay with it. I mean, that's what more do you need? But most of us have things, reasons, purposes for being here. And if a person is not living their purpose, it can lead to a lot of depression. It can lead to a lot of angst. It can, I mean, you know, you're not doing what you should. And so I can help that person to find their dream. In one case, it was a factory worker who really, all of his life, he had wanted to fly. And he had flown, but he hadn't flown in 15 years, something like this. And so we went through it step by step and took him to the point where he became not only a pilot, but he was a pilot for an air ambulance company.
Yeah.
So I do help people who have had trauma to be able to figure, or who are in trauma, to be able to figure out. I see myself as a light that shines on the path so that they can, and I'm kind of the guide, but I don't tell them where to go. I let them see where they need to go, and then they can figure out what path is best for them moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that and things. And like I said, it's incredible when we can come to an understanding or an acceptance about, you know, death and dying, that it isn't such a something to be feared. It's something that we're all going to experience and have possibly experienced many times, if you're into, you know, the belief of reincarnation. But it's just another process in our journeys and things. And can I ask you now, Lee, with your experiences, what motivates you every day, like to get out of bed in the morning? What keeps you going?
The idea that the message that I've been given is so powerful and so helpful to people that it needs to get out. While I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I understand that my time in this particular form is probably limited. We all are in that.
Limited. Yes.
But some of us realize it may be closer than we think.
Yeah.
And I'm in that category. And so I get up every morning wanting to see if there might be some people who need to have this message, who can benefit from this message, and how can I help them get that?
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And talking about getting people your message, you've got a book coming out very soon.
I do. It's supposed to be published June 5 or 6. And it's called There Was No Fear, The Transformational Power of Near-Death and Shared Death Experiences. And it's made for today's busy audience who has so many things on their plate. They don't want to read a whole long 400 pages, and they're used to getting information at the touch of a button. So this is written in simple language. It's about 64 pages long, and it's easy to read. It's made to be read by anybody and give them what I know and the tools that I have to be able to use in their own lives.
Well, we will put everything in the comments for how people can get it when it comes out. Love for you to come back when it does come out, and we can really, really, you know, show everyone your book and talk about it more. Things. And can I ask you also, Lee, with your experience, you know, if you've got a message to share with the world or a legacy that you'd like to leave for all the people, especially, you know, all the children growing up now in today's world of craziness, and not just craziness, but, you know, not considering that we are, you know, one day that we will leave this physical world. But if you could leave a legacy, what would that be?
That we are all one. Every one of us is one. If we all understood how much we are all one, and that becomes we are also all part of the same, we were all created by the same single energy, creative energy source, which makes us all the same. If we understood that, we wouldn't hurt each other, and we would be able to live in joy and love the way that this world was created to be, without the separations that humans have placed on it.
Love that. Love that. And that's what you experienced when you had your NDEs too. We are all just one. And stuff, including one with the world, one, you know, imagine how we would treat each other if we really embodied, accepted that we are all just one. Love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Before we wrap up, is there any questions that I could have asked for you, and how would have you answered? So is there anything else that you would like to share?
I think we could go on for hours, but we will save that for the next time. And I'm excited and honored to come back again.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just love to know more about, you know, like I've always been fascinated. I've read so many stories about NDEs and things like that. And it's just a really amazing experience, you know, to know that there is so much more than this physical body. So thank you ever so much for sharing it. We will put everything in the comments as soon as we finish. And I look forward to seeing your book when it comes out. So it's on June the 5th or the 6th?
That's what the date I've been given right now. Yes.
Right, right. And the title of your book again?
There Was No Fear,
Yeah.
The Transformational Power of Near-Death and Shared Death Experiences.
Love it. Love it. There was no fear. Because really, what is there to fear about death?
There's really nothing to fear
nothing.
in the entire world.
No.
Even in this life, there's nothing to fear.
No, it's what we make of it. So thank you, Lee. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. It has been a real honor. And like I said, I do look forward to being able to read your book and sharing it with the world and sharing your message, because it's such a big thing. We have a couple of people in our community who it's their mission is to talk about death and dying. So it's just a natural part of life. We all have to go through it. Yet it's incredible how we all avoid it or try and avoid it. Thank you, Lee. We'll talk to you very, very soon.
Thank you.